I'm Deepak Chopra. I'm at the home of Jill Purce and her husband, Rupert Sheldrake, in Hampstead, a little bit outside of London, in England. And I'm going to speak to Jill right now about the role of chanting in healing at all levels. Jill, first of all, thank you for having me at your home.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. I think the word enchantment means to become one with all that is through chanting, or am I mistaken? Enchantment.
Well, I take it to mean enchanted, as in to be made magical through chant. Mm-hmm. And it's been my intention since I started many years ago to enchant. To instigate the possibility of enchanting the world again, because we have become disenchanted. Everybody is disenchanted with this or that. And so to enchant really means to make magical through chanting again, which means to integrate with the greater forces, to integrate and to become one with the spirit, to become present. You know, in all traditions, the most important thing is to be present, is to be here and to be now. And most of us spend most of our time regretting what we forgot to do yesterday and dreading what we will therefore have to do tomorrow, and separate from the present.
And chanting brings us into the present moment?
You can only chant in the present. And so if you chant at the same time as you're chanting, you're listening to the chanting that you're chanting. While you're chanting, you create a circuit of attention, which means that you can only be present. It's one of the most fun and ways of actually doing something which is not so easy to do, to be present.
Now, you've been doing this for decades. How did you get started?
Well, I started, I think it was bred on the bone. My mother was a concert pianist, my father was a surgeon, and then later an MD. And I was brought up in a kind of sonorous healing sandwich. And as a child, we used to spend our summers in the west of Ireland, and my father was very eccentric, and on one occasion, when everybody else was going to bed, he decided that we should go on a journey to this island off the coast, the west coast of Ireland. And so we set off at night in this tiny boat, and a storm blew up, and we all knew we were going to drown. And the only people in the boat, apart from me and my brother and my parents, was 3 old women dressed in black at the back of the boat. And as the storm blew up and we became really terrified, these 3 women started a chant. And as they chanted, our fear turned to a kind of blissfulness. And the wind subsided and the storm abated, and we arrived. And I saw that this was a first transmission of the power of sound as a transformative tool, as something which transforms not just our emotions, which is comprehensible, but actually the elements themselves.
So chanting has been a tradition in all cultures for thousands of years.
Since the beginning, we chanted to remain living. So, you know, in early times, people praised the greater force, the divine, or whatever, whoever in whose ever hands they felt their destiny in life to be. And so the only way of remaining living was to be friends with the boss. And so chanting was a way praising the divine, the Great Spirit, God, or whatever name it was given. Praising, and then good manners, then petitioning, then asking for help. You know, may my children pass their exams, but you don't do it without praising first, honouring, you know. Then you ask, then you petition, and then on a more sophisticated level, participation. I call these the 3 Ps: praise, petition, and then participation.
Praise,
petition, and participation. So in all traditions, people have literally chanted to survive, to participate, well, to ask for help, to, you know, may the crops grow, may the rain fall, may my mother, may my sister have a child, may my wife have a child, and so on, since the beginning.
Over all these decades that you've taught chanting, have you noticed those things happening, people healing, influencing the forces of nature?
Absolutely. The effects are completely extraordinary. And one time I had, one of the forms of chanting I teach is overtone chanting, where you chant on a single note. And this is very useful because many people say, I can't sing in tune. Well, you can only not sing in tune if you have 2 notes. It's relative. So on one note, you really can't be out of tune. and then going within, splitting the sound, so you hear the inner sounds, the overtones, the harmonics inside the tune itself, the sound itself. And I was doing this on one occasion in a workshop, and I had a man came up to me at the end and he said, well, I'm a brain physiologist. It turns out he's a very famous brain physiologist. And he said, I'm really interested in what you're doing because you're vibrating the brain. And so I said, yes, we're vibrating the brain. He said, well, that's what we do when we do electric shock treatment. We vibrate the brain. And, and so electric shock treatment, although it may ruin your short-term memory, it brings on bliss states and people feel happier and so on. So they know that vibrating the brain is a positive thing to do. So I suggested that this might be a less interventory kind of way of vibrating the brain. Mm-hmm. And yes, it brings on, because it allows people to be in the present, and you can't be, most illness comes about through anxiety, through anticipating what might happen. And since you can only be in the present when you're chanting and you're attending, it's more important to listen to the sound you're making almost than the sound, to make the sound you're listening to. So it's a circuit of attention, and if you're completely present, then you cannot be anticipating that which you have failed to do or what might happen.
Do you sometimes ask people to direct sound to different parts of the body?
Absolutely, yes, you can. With intention, you can direct it wherever you want to, and you can get inside the body, which my father was a surgeon, and so I'm used to scalpels and things. But actually, sound allows you to get inside the body, to vibrate the bones, and wherever you move your attention, you can move the sound, and then you can heal and activate the potential of your resonant field of potential healing.
I've recently been in contact with a scientist, a materials scientist at MIT, and he suggested to me that every object in the universe, from atom to galaxy to all the objects in this room, to the molecules in our body, to the microtubules in our brain, to the DNA of our cells, they have a signature, a sound signature, or what he calls a resonance signature. But these signatures kind of overlap with each other, so there's a chain of resonance that connects everything with everything else in the entire universe. And he's able to actually measure through technology the resonance of micro objects, atoms, molecules, basic structures in our cells, and organs, and the entire brain. And recently we brought him to our center where we do meditation practices, but we also play Vedic chants, and these are ancient mantras, and we saw the brain responding within 3 minutes to just listening to these chants, and the brain going into delta, less than 4 cycles, and the entire brain kind of becoming coherent. So all the basic electromagnetic frequencies from different parts of the brain were vibrating to the same frequency.
I think this is essential. I think healing is about coherence, and it's not just internal coherence, which sound produces and allows to happen, but it's also coherence with others, with our social community. And it's also coherence with nature. And so, the geometries of nature and our internal organs need to be in resonance with each other. And that's one of the things, by making the breath conscious, by making it through sustained sound, we're able to induct a kind of coherence into all systems and to relate all systems to all other systems. And I think this is one of the main powers and benefits of actively
And if
chanting.
we are part of nature, so the sounds should not only affect us, but we can influence the habits of nature, can
Absolutely, I'm sure, yes.
So there's some kind of valid way to think of using chants to bring about rain and make the crops grow and the seeds sprout.
Definitely, it dissolves the boundaries. You're talking about every sound having its own form. We know that. If you have a wine glass and wind a wet finger around the wine glass, it sings. If you have a good quality wine glass, usually much better quality than people will use to try this, and an accurate voice, you can, by just wavering above and below through the most awkward bits of the sound, you can actually shatter the wine glass. So every sound every form has its own sound, which we can use, which is the sound of its own creation, but also the sound we use for shattering, dissolving, or you know, the sound itself.
Even dolphins and whales communicate through sound.
Everybody, everything, all systems communicate through sound, and one of the things that I did when I early on, you know, I was working with Tibetan lamas very early on, and then in 71, 74 I was working with Karl-Heinz Stockhausen, a very, very interesting composer in the Western art music tradition, and through that I came across a form of chanting through both of them, where you chant on a single note and you amplify the harmonics. And this is very important because in Western music, which we now export to all other cultures, you know, world music is now heavily influenced by Western intonations. But the point about the Western music is it's all out of tune, because of the popularity of keyboards in the 17th century and the tuning system. There was something called the Pythagorean comma, which was when you do a cycle of fifths, a note to its fifth, to its fifth, to its fifth, you come to a point where you overlap, not reaching the octave exactly, but you overlap by a quarter of a semitone. So the Western tuning system, the well-tempered system, takes this quarter of a semitone and rams it back into the octave, making all the intervals within the octave a little bit expanded or contracted, and which means that all intervals in Western music are out of tune. And so when I started working with sound, I realized that, you know, in order for us to be sound, you know, to be sound means to be healthy and true. To be sound in mind and body, we have to retune, not just use Western tuning because it's not in tune. So if somebody comes to tune your piano in your house, they tune it out of tune. So by working with the overtones, by chanting on a single note, and by allowing the different cavities in the body, in the head and the pharynx and the larynx, to amplify the sound, you make the harmonics audible, which means that the sounds that you're amplifying and making audible are in tune. So it means that you can actually be internally coherent. You can be in tune with the people around you and with nature in a way that Western music doesn't. Western music is a Faustian bargain. We'll make all our music out of tune, and then look what we can do with it. So all music since Bach was only possible because of it, but it's all out of tune. So this is a way of chanting, of making sound where you can actually be in tune with nature and with each other and with all the geometries of nature and your own internal geometrical coherence.
So would you be willing to do some chanting with the overtones that you speak of?
Yes, I could demonstrate that.
Let's do that.
Yes,
now.
okay. Just one note, and then there are all these notes inside.
And you can feel the vibrations everywhere.
Yes, everything comes into a kind of order. There's a kind of induction of order. And all traditions talk about enlightenment as an induction of order. You know, the Vajra or the diamond mind, or they're all descriptions of ordered systems. Every description of enlightenment has some connotation with order.
And every cell in our body is singing too.
Yes.
And along with the whole body and with our ecosystem and with the stars and galaxies.
Everything sings.
There's a symphony in the universe and we're dancing to it, even though we can't name the tune.
Yes, in medieval, Boethius talked about the medieval time, musica humana, musica mundana, and musica instrumentalis. And so musica mundana was the music of the heavens, musica humana was our own emotional and psychological and psychic state, and musica instrumentalis, which was used to coordinate the two, is instrumental and vocal music as we know it. So the whole system was seen as musical, with an integration by the conscious sounds that we make.
Where does speech fit in?
Well,
language.
The difference between, speech is very interesting because when I see you, I name you. So at the moment I have a name for you, I'm separate from you. So every name is a way of separating and therefore having control over, because, you know, Deepak, I know you, I know you're a friend. You know, if I didn't, I might be, you know, be anxious for my safety. So every name we give makes the world outside, it differentiates it into multiplicity, and at the same time makes it safe because we've known it before, so we have a whole bag of things around it. But every spiritual tradition goes beyond the naming into the thing itself, into the nature of the thing itself. But language is, and so mantra uses language. It takes language and uses it consciously to make you, to lull you into thinking you're in a familiar place of discursive thought. So words that we know about, but actually they're not words that we know about, because it's not a discursive sentence. There, each one has a meaning, but you repeat them and you go beyond them. Sometimes it's silence, sometimes it's sound. But when you're chanting, so when you're speaking, there's the acoustic content of your voice is half noise and half tone. So because the vowels are harmonics and the consonants are noise sounds, and we use the consonants, the noise sounds, to punctuate the ordered part of the sound, which is the harmonics, which is supremely ordered. But when we sing, so when we intone, sing, or extend or sustain the sound, what we're sustaining, what we only can sustain, are the harmonics, are the vowels. You cannot sustain the noise. So so as soon as you move into chant, as soon as you move into song or intoning prayers, or what you extend is order. And then at the end you have to, you have to have a noise sound to retrospectively make sense of what you've been singing or chanting. But the extended part is order. So as soon as you move into any kind of intoning, chanting or singing, you have a greater induction of order. Whereas when you're speaking, it's much more disorder, aleatoric as it's called in music, and chants.
So language is basically a very differentiated form of the vibration, as you said. Separating us in chanting is going back to the source.
Exactly, yes, becoming one.
My very special guest has been Jill Purce, and she heals people through the magic of chanting. Healing, health, holy, they all come from the same source. Healing is the memory of, healing is the return of the memory of wholeness, and chanting is one of the most important ways to go back to the source. Anything more?
Going back to the source is what it's about. It's remembering where we've come from, and bringing back the dismembered parts of that have been cast asunder. So memory, recollection and memory is gathering us back into the one.
Very interesting, the word remember, to bring back that was dismembered.
Yes, exactly.
To reassemble.
And to recollect is the same.
To recollect,
yes, to gather up the bits.
In Vedic tradition they're called smriti and shruti. Smriti is the memory, cosmic memory of our source, and shruti is that which is heard. So to remember through hearing the symphony, the music, the chanting of the cosmos.
That's the interesting thing about the overtones. Whenever I do the overtones, or when people learn how to do these overtones, there's a sense of, there's a very profound sense of memory. It's as if people have, it's a recollection. They've heard it before. They know what it is. It's recognition, and you can only recognize, you can only recognize something you've already known.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you very much.
Thank you.